He who cannot obey himself will be commanded. That is the nature of living creatures. Nietzsche. You grind, you sweat, you sacrifice. You wake before the sun, stay long after it sets. You show up, tired, aching, still moving. You say yes when you're drowning. You keep going. For what? You live like virtue is a currency. Like one day someone will notice. That somehow, someday, this invisible scoreboard will tip in your favor. But the scoreboard doesn't care. Because while you're clocking in early, some guy in a rented Lamborghini is selling lies to millions, making more in a day than you do in a month. He's not better. He's not deeper. But he's winning. And you're wondering what you did wrong. That's not the right question. The right question is, what lie have you swallowed so completely that you can't even taste it anymore? The one that says, hard work is holy, obedience will be rewarded, sacrifice will be seen. But look around. The world doesn't run on fairness. It runs on control. And the people who rise? They don't always work harder. They work the game. So maybe you're not failing. Maybe you're just waking up. And that's the beginning of something terrifying, but real. Because if this system isn't broken, if it's functioning exactly as it was built to, then the truth is darker than you thought. But it's also clearer. Let's go there. The death of the moral worker, the myth of virtue. They told you it was noble to suffer in silence, to stay late, to show up early, to swallow your rage and still say thank you. They told you that loyalty was strength, that sacrifice would speak louder than ambition, that goodness, quiet and unquestioning, was the currency of success. But you're not being paid in success. You're being paid in fatigue. And even that barely covers the rent. You are not losing because you're lazy. You're losing because the game rewards those who refuse to play by your rules. You were taught the myth of virtue, that to give more is to become more, that obedience is strength in disguise, that the right people are watching, that the system keeps receipts, that it's only a matter of time. But time is not on your side. This isn't a broken machine. It's a design, a machine that feeds on the moral, a system that grows rich off your restraint. Your pride in being dependable, it makes you replaceable. Your humility, it makes you invisible. You think morality makes you safe, but it just makes you useful. This is not about effort. This is about power. And in this world, the obedient are not promoted. They're processed. The more you endure, the more you lose. Because they don't reward virtue. They weaponize it. You are not a saint. You are not a martyr. You are a resource. And deep down, you know it. Because you've seen the ones who rise. They cut corners. They charm. They own the narrative. And the sickest part? They smile when they win. Because they know you still believe. Still believe in fairness. Still believe that hard work speaks for itself. But it doesn't. Not here. This isn't a world of merit. It's a world of maneuvering. And the myth you were handed? That virtue is strength? That was never meant to lift you. It was meant to tame you. You were taught the just world, that the good are seen, that the faithful are chosen, that justice is slow but inevitable. But Nietzsche saw the delusion. He called it slave morality, not a moral system, a survival tactic disguised as truth. It says, be small, be soft, be quiet, because that's all the powerless ever had. And so they made it sacred. They renamed fear patience, renamed submission integrity, renamed despair faith. But this faith blinds, it numbs. It keeps your head down while others climb over your back. You wear your suffering like armor, but it's not protecting you. It's imprisoning you. You think your endurance makes you righteous, but the system calls it compliance. Because the more you wait, the more you hope, the more manageable you become. And here's the cruelest truth. Obedience isn't moral. It's convenient. To them, not to you. So let's stop pretending. You are not where you are because you didn't try hard enough. You are here because you were trained not to question, not to confront, not to see the cage. You weren't raised to lead. You were raised to behave. And now, That deep ache inside you, that isn't failure, that's awakening. You are beginning to see the bars, beginning to feel the weight of every yes you were too afraid not to say. And the question isn't, how do I fix this? It's this: who benefits from me staying asleep? Because waking up means unlearning the myth. And when the myth crumbles, you don't just lose your story, you lose your identity. But what you gain is power. So if you're ready, not to fight the old, but to face it, then we can go deeper. Because what comes next isn't just a system, it's the logic behind it, the language of leverage, the blueprint of control. And it starts with the most dangerous realization of all. The system rewards power, not effort. A nurse resets bones, soothes screams, saves lives. 12 hours on her feet, misses holidays, skips meals, and then apologizes for asking to go home early. A janitor scrubs the vomit off the floor you walk on. Before the sun, after the rush. Always invisible, a trucker hauls the food that fills your plate. 2 days without sleep. Alone with the road. One wreck away from vanishing. These are the people who hold the world up. And they are drowning. In bills. In exhaustion. In silence. While the man with perfect teeth and empty eyes films another clip in a rented Lamborghini. Tells you how to make $1 million. Sells illusions. And wins. And you wonder why. Why the ones who sweat earn scraps? Why the ones who manipulate walk on gold? Why the ones who serve are crushed under the weight of service, while those who dominate are lifted like gods? Here's why. Because labor is not rewarded. Leverage is. You can only work so many hours, you can only lift so much. But control? Control scales. One sentence moves billions. One connection opens empires. They don't trade time, they trade perception. And perception is the currency of the modern god. You were trained to follow instructions. They were trained to shape outcomes. You learned how to endure. They learned how to influence. You memorized rules. They rewrote the board. This isn't a bug. It's the architecture, a system designed to reward those who own, not those who operate. Because ownership scales, because narrative scales. Because power, when abstracted from effort, becomes exponential. You can sweat your soul out every day and still be forgotten. But one person with the right leverage walks through every locked door. And here's the cruelty. You were taught to call that fairness. Taught to call their rise earned. Taught to believe they're smarter, better, chosen. But they aren't. They're not winning because they work harder. They're winning because they stop playing your game. You call it virtue, they call it strategy. You hope, they calculate. You pray to be noticed. They position to be needed. And still you cling to your story. That one day, effort will be seen. That justice lives at the end of this suffering. But what if that story was written by the very people who profit from your belief in it? What if you were never meant to win? Only meant to believe you could? Because a system built on obedience needs believers. It needs workers who stay busy chasing crumbs, so that no one questions who owns the bakery. And if you dare ask why effort isn't enough, they'll tell you to be patient, to be grateful, to be good. But Nietzsche would laugh. He'd tell you morality was crafted by those in charge, to pacify, not to empower. He would not tell you to stop working. He would tell you to stop being used, to stop confusing silence with strength, to stop confusing decency with debt. You owe them nothing, because in this game, virtue isn't a virtue, it's a mechanism, a tool to make you manageable, controllable, replaceable. And every time you bite your tongue, say yes, take on more, you tighten the leash around your own throat. So ask yourself, not gently, who does your exhaustion serve? Who profits from your restraint? Because once you see it, truly see it, there's no going back. You either keep playing by rules that were never made for you, or you start learning the rules that are actually being used, the real rules, the ones they never taught you, because they were never meant to. And from here, from this crack in the illusion, we begin to see what lies beneath the mask of morality. we begin to see who really wrote the story you've been living, and more importantly, why. Slave morality, the poison that numbs your rage. They couldn't win, so they rewrote the meaning of winning. They couldn't rise, so they built a story where kneeling was holy. This is how the powerless survive. They take their chains and call them sacred. They take their silence and call it wisdom. They take their fear and rename it faith. Nietzsche saw through it. He called it what it is: slave morality. Not morality as strength, not morality as clarity, but morality as coping. A story written by those who could not compete. So they changed the rules of the game. They said, the strong are wicked, the proud are sinful, the successful are corrupt. And then they told you, be meek, be humble, be obedient. And you believed them, because they wrapped the poison in praise. They told you your suffering made you pure. They told you your restraint made you holy. They told you that goodness meant never fighting back. You swallowed it. So did your parents. So did their parents. And the myth passed down like inheritance, not to free you, to tame you. You think your silence is strength, but it's just a language they taught you to speak so you'd never scream. You think your patience is power, but it's a leash you've worn so long you call it jewelry. You think morality is a universal law, but Nietzsche said it plain. It's a tool, a tactic, a leash invented by the defeated to dull the pain of losing. You see a man standing alone in power and call him selfish, because you were trained to see sovereignty as sin, because autonomy threatens the world you were taught to worship, the world where virtue equals sacrifice, where nobility means compliance, where loyalty is the height of achievement. But what has that loyalty earned you? A small plaque, a well-done email, a raise that doesn't even cover inflation. They are not gifts. They are tranquilizers. Just enough praise to keep you from questioning. Just enough status to keep you in line. You think they respect your character, but they're relieved by your predictability. You are not rewarded for your integrity. You are managed through it, because you're easy to control when your value is tied to being good. When you fear being seen as selfish more than being seen as invisible. And every time you say yes when you mean no, you are not serving virtue. You are performing captivity. This isn't about being evil. It's about being awake. The world will not end if you say no, but the illusion you live in will begin to collapse. The version of you that survives on crumbs of recognition must die. Because you were not born to be remembered for your sacrifice. You were born to be remembered for your will. Nietzsche didn't want you to abandon values. He wanted you to forge them. To build a morality born from power, not from fear. You don't need to throw away your soul, but you must stop confusing obedience with depth. Morality without power is a muzzle, and the more noble you try to be, the more invisible you become. So if the cost of being good is self-erasure, is that goodness worth it? And more dangerously, who told you it was? Because when you start to ask that, when the myth starts to fracture, you don't just see a lie. You start to see a blueprint, a system of values designed not to free you, but to domesticate you. And what comes next is not comfort. It is not safety. It is the slow, burning rage of awakening. And the question that rises from the fire is not, how do I get out? It's this: what am I willing to destroy inside myself to become free? And it is only after you ask that we can begin to speak of the real transformation, of what it means to leave the cage without becoming the very thing that built it. Awakening, from worker to warrior. You've seen it, you've felt it, you've lived it. You picked up the extra shifts, you stayed quiet in the meetings, you solved the problems no one saw coming, and they forgot your name the next day. You thought you were building trust, you were just building silence. You thought being low maintenance made you admirable, it made you invisible. Because in this world, virtue without power is a whisper in a hurricane, and those who whisper are swept aside. The system doesn't hate you, it doesn't even notice you. It is not malicious, it is indifferent, and that indifference is the sharpest blade of all. You hoped, and hope is the softest cage, the kind you don't notice until the door slams shut, because the obedient don't rise. They wait, they rationalize, they pray for fairness. They call it patience, but it's fear dressed in Sunday clothes. They told you to be a good worker, but they trained you to be manageable. And so your kindness became currency for someone else. Your silence became strategy for someone else. Your discipline became leverage for someone else. While you tried to be enough, they learned how to use your desire to be enough. And here is the unspoken truth. You are not weak. You are misdirected. You've been burning in the wrong direction. Chasing a version of goodness that was never yours, living by a moral code designed to keep you useful, not powerful. But this is where the shift begins. This isn't a call to cruelty. This isn't a manifesto for bitterness. It's a demand for consciousness. Stop treating pain as proof of character. Stop offering your exhaustion as a resume. Stop confusing humility with worth. You've tried to earn respect by bleeding quietly. But what if respect isn't earned by suffering? What if it's claimed by alignment? Not louder, not harsher, clearer. Clarity is more radical than rage, and boundaries are more powerful than burnout. So let's make this simple. Kindness, when strategic, becomes influence. Compassion, when chosen, becomes strength. And walking away, when it's time, becomes the first act of authorship. Because here's the truth they never wanted you to learn. You don't need to dominate others. You need to reclaim yourself. Not power to control, power to choose, power to speak, power to build on your own terms. This is what Nietzsche called the Übermensch, not a tyrant, not a monster, but a creator, a self-made soul, one who stops asking for validation and starts carving meaning from stone. It's not about abandoning morality. It's about choosing it. Not worshiping values that keep you silent, but crafting values that set you free. Your job isn't to be palatable, it's to be whole. So what does that look like? It looks like saying no, without apology. It looks like leaving, without needing to justify. It looks like standing alone, without collapsing. It looks like staring down the system and whispering, "You do not own me." This is not the end of morality. This is the rebirth of it. Stripped of obedience, stripped of performance, stripped of guilt. This is morality with a spine. This is you, awake. And now that your eyes are open, the next step becomes unavoidable. What do you build when you're no longer willing to serve a structure that feeds on your silence? What kind of life can be made by someone who no longer waits to be chosen, but chooses themselves, completely? Let's go there. The Übermensch doesn't wait to be seen, he sees himself. So now, you've seen the mechanism. You've felt the leash tighten. You've tasted the bitterness of doing everything right, and getting nothing but exhaustion in return. The betrayal wasn't personal, it was structural. You were taught to kneel, and call it integrity. But what happens now? Do you double down? Keep shining the armor they handed you? Keep praying that someday someone will say, "You mattered"? Or do you burn it all down? Do you finally stop mistaking chains for character? Because here's what most never do. They never leave the script. They die in a role someone else wrote for them. The loyal worker, the good soldier, the quiet one. But not you. Not if you're still reading. Not if something inside you refuses to die quietly. This is the moment where your obedience ends and your authorship begins, where you stop living like a cog and start building like a god. You don't need a throne. You need a will, a direction, a defiance, a voice. Not the morality of silence, but the morality of sovereignty. Not the path of being liked, but the path of being real. Because the Übermensch doesn't beg to be noticed. He doesn't submit to be worthy. He doesn't suffer to earn meaning. He creates it, he chooses, he forges, he becomes. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Nietzsche. So let me ask you now, Not softly, but like a mirror cracking in your face. What lie are you still serving? And what truth are you finally ready to bleed for? If this struck something deep in you, don't scroll past it in silence. Comment, I stop asking for permission. Share this with someone still asleep in a life of moral labor. Let them wake up, or watch them be used.